can we do an equivalent?
Absolutely.
Oh, you
Hydraulic
could?
equivalent would be
Okay.
acceptable.
Could we have different configurations, I guess, as long as they're equivalent?
Yeah.
Okay, there you
You
go.
know, what we're interested in is the way the water is managed. The particular method is important, but it's not the most critical. So if in one area it ends up being an 18-inch pipe with an 18-inch riser, that's fine. If that ends up being metal on plastic, again, fine. It's about how the water is going to flow through that structure. And there are a number of configurations that can solve that. So we'll certainly be open to looking at different kinds of design.
Well, then on that, you would be looking at 44678 to attach a metal riser to a plastic pipe. Now, we may get something.
And how many of those do we have in each section?
Half-mile roads, you would have 14, typical 14 if you don't have any outs.
Good thing too, Tom, is we can put a 5-year plan into place. It's not like we have to do this in the next year. They want to know that we're coming into compliance and we have a plan.
And that is correct. I mean, we'll need to discuss the actual time frame, but there's not an expectation this is going to be done within the next quarter. All right, what we'd like to see is a plan that includes a timeline, and then some, the ability to discuss the length of that plan. This is not something to go on ad infinitum, but it can be done over a period of time in recognition of budget constraints.
We really need to get a 5-year plan together with this included in it. That's what we're doing.
I think that would be a good planning tool for you all, but that's really a discussion for your engineer.
Yeah, I think they're thinking of just they want a timeline to bring us
Well,
compliance.
we have a 5-year plan that's
And then you're referring to
15 years
the
old or so.
the water control
And
plan.
same thing every. Okay. So you're working on that.
Okay, so option 2 looks like the best because it's the cheapest. Is that what you're saying, Tom?
Hold on.
We're
I don't like
still gonna
3
check it
myself,
out.
and I don't think you're gonna like 3.
Well, if there's going to be places where we may need to replace pipes, so we can either put in the 18-inch pipe, or we can go with option 1. Option 1 is, I think that has 30 foot. That's 30 foot. That's a complete package. So if you had to replace a pipe, on option 2, you have the riser plus pipe. So the prices are going to start getting very close, or actually probably a little bit more for option 2.
Well, we can work on this.
Yeah, I think maybe we
Why
should.
did you even come up with the idea of the aluminum plate rather than boards?
Because we're gonna have these boards are to stay in place. It's just a little more permanent, a little more difficult for someone to remove. I mean, we can put a bolt in the other, but I mean, it's
Okay.
aluminum plate would be welded to it.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's welded.
So
But then doesn't it make it nearly impossible to clean out? Because now you've got a 4-inch hole on one end.
you have
that
a
you're
top.
gonna force.
you have
Oh,
the
okay.
top's open.
All right.
That's just something that maybe more likely to stay there than the boards that someone can pick.
Oh, yeah.
Which
We know
does
that
solve
happens
all
here.
aluminum. Maybe we should go through the other items with South Florida while they're here, and then we
Mhm.
can iron out the details of
Yeah,
how
we
we
just
want
wanted
to
to.
move forward with this. The only other thing on the and I know the question listed the half-mile roads and putting these risers, but the through roads where we have pipes at a crossing in a canal, the north-south canal, we have 2 pipes come in each side of that. When that was a de minimis exemption or whatever, some years ago those were designed. Now we showed 18-inch pipes coming into those, but I think the original permit shows a riser structure. You guys have any thought on that, Gary?
I'm not sure I exactly understand the question.
Right next to the major roads.
Our major north-south canals, you have the crossings. Each, and then four quadrants, you have, pipes that come in to it. When we redid that, I know it was shown that there were 18-inch pipes coming in, but I don't know, is that official, or do we, I think the original permit shows probably a 12-inch with a.
I think I'd want to see that on the permit and see what the intent of it was. If it was shown with the intent in the permit to modify that to just a straight pipe. You're saying a straight pipe as opposed to one with a riser. Let's look into the details of the application and see if that was their intent of it.
Okay.
Fair enough.
There were three other items. The brush and the ditches, you know, that's.
It's going
I think
away.
that's more of a note from South Florida
Excuse me, what are you talking about now?
their
The
letter.
woody vegetation,
The woody.
non-compliant. You want to see it?
I got it all right here, I got it.
Okay.
So,
I'm trying to file his report and this thing too, so I wasn't sure where he was at.
the culverts under 256, 1 mile, those have been removed. Your item number 3, it's done. The only other one that I mentioned a little bit of this to Jess the other day on the phone, the 3 structures under the T-Vine Trail. Original permit says 18 inch by 29 arch pipes, which that is a 24-inch equivalent, but there's 24-inch round pipes installed there. You think foresee any problem if the elevations are good and we can put a riser that meets the permit criteria? I mean,
No, there's no issue with that.
Obviously the arch pipe flows more sooner, so.
No,
The permit.
Yeah, the intent of the permit is being met, it's at that point in time, the critical issue becomes the riser structures on the head.
So, item number 1, we need to get a surveyor out there to check the elevations on the pipes so we can configure a riser to put on. We can bring that into compliance.
We'll make a motion that we do that, and get surveyors out there to get busy on it, or what? So we can get this done.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, I second that motion. I need.
What are you saying, Tom? A motion to have
I'll
the,
make a motion that we, do the compliance thing with what, Brian was talking about, go out there and put risers on them or whatever, just came up with there, get started on it. And we do the work ourselves,
A motion to have
the motion.
Trade Winds survey the 3 pipes under the Piedmont Trail. I'm not the one in charge, but I don't think it was finished. The motion was made, it was seconded, but
What do you got?
Everybody in favor say aye. Aye.
aye,
so the only other one that we really have to work out is how coming up with a plan on these riser pipes, where we're going to do it, and how we're going to do it. Is there anything else that any of you have for South
There's
Florida?
areas and neighborhoods that are flooding really bad that didn't used to, and so you're saying to do a test area of kind of a north and south approach. The north is emptying out maybe faster. Because A was sort of a test to begin with, and they completed, I think, all of A. It's a different scenario. Probably, I don't know, did they do E? Did they put 18s on E? And so D
I
was
don't know.
started,
There's
was
not
it,
a 12-inch pipe out there.
they're all replaced and changed over?
I don't know that all of them are thin the plastic, but the 12 inches that were out, there are even the old metal ones that are there. They're not. I think they're like an arch pipe, right? A switch pipe, but they're 18-inch equivalent. There's nothing 12-inch out here.
I think in my disc I used to have 12, and Mr. Barnhill thought it was 12 too. Didn't you say you thought it was 12 before?
Are you talking about the piece of pipe on the back of you? Or
going into the ditches, although that's not a horseshoe ditch. So I don't know.
Mr. Barnhill indicated at the last meeting that whenever parts of it, at least parts of it, when it was constructed, there were 12-inch pipes put in. But they're
But you're saying they're gone now,
They're
okay.
gone.
So everything we have is 18. Alright, I was just wondering if it would be a fair, test if there's neighborhoods that are flooding more than they used to. Like if you set up there,
I will tell you, if you're getting to your area, if you're wondering
And
about your
the-
area,
B Canal too.
you know, it may help you, it may not. You know, the water comes in there now, and it's gotta get so high, it goes out, and then it's slow to go down.
Mm-hmm.
When we slow it down out here, you're gonna get it slowly coming in, so I don't know if it's gonna benefit or not, because maybe the slow trickle in just keeps things elevated longer,
Mm-hmm.
if that's possible. So, I mean, we just gotta sit down and decide where we want to do it.
But you would like all 5 done, tested.
Well, I mean, that's the recommendation would be to, and then, we've heard, is to test it, and it certainly seems like a very kind of prudent thing to do, would be to test and make sure that we don't cause a problem when we're trying to solve one,
Right.
or just move the problem to another location. So that's why Brian's recommendation, was we were open to considering it, because it made sense.
How many do you think we would test at a time? Like 3 or 4 north, 3 or 4 south?
Maybe we do my initial thought was do like a section, which that would be 14 million potentially. Do a section, one section only. So you've got like 7 each side.
Yeah,
And kind of,
but that's not a good general 5 like he's saying, top and bottom.
What, if I could make a recommendation, would be to let Brian come up with a plan, quite literally a map, a plan of where we want to do these, and then he and I can discuss those and negotiate essentially where we think the most critical locations would be. So that way he can keep an eye on the budget, and we can keep an eye on the impact side of things,
Okay.
and find a compromise that allows us to move forward and accurately test, this scenario.
Alright. See what we're doing. And you're gonna go forward with 2? Option 2?
well, we need to look at where we're doing this, and then and look at see what pipes are there. So it could be option 2. But if we start replacing pipes, we may want to go. It could be an option 1 or option 2. If there's not a huge cost difference, I think keeping things consistent is better than different things out there. Just to eliminate confusion in the future or whatever. It just seems if it's the cost difference is
inventory, yeah.
negligible.
Yeah.
Keep it consistent. Meaning, go with option 2. Put in a plastic pipe, 18-inch plastic pipe. So, but we could go back to option 1 if it turns out that it's significantly cheaper. Use a combination option 1 and 2.
Well, I was thinking you were saying, I think you said in this report that a bunch of them on E were failing or something and you had to redo them.
I just pointed out when I went and rode E that there were pipes that there are problems that were put in. There are problems. I don't know whatever's happened to them. I didn't inspect them real well. I didn't just stick my head in and make sure it's still flowing. But
It's just if it's cheaper and you have to redo it.
yeah, we don't want to do we have a budget, so
Yeah, that's what I was saying. As long as the outcome's the same, you said we can mix and match, so I think we should.
but it's if you guys are good with that.
If they're good with it,
Yeah, they're good with it. Okay.
alright. Do you have more things that rely on that? The reason we wanted you guys to come here is because if two board members meet with you, then it's sort of gotta be a public meeting. And so, you know, Tom said he'd meet with you, and I said, well, I wanna know too, and so that was the only reason we drove you out here. Thanks for coming.
We're more than happy to come. Thanks for the invitation.
The only other thing I have that will involve them is getting these small mines done, certified. And I think it'd be better if I just could go in either by phone or go meet with Gary at some point, perhaps whenever we do this other meeting, and discuss. There's some things, kind of some discrepancies in that permit also on how far to carry the 4-to-1 slope down. Kind of the plans show one thing, the permit wording says another. So kind of like to discuss that and then try to go ahead and put that thing to rest.
That would be great.
Because I think it's March of next year.
Okay. So we're kind of done tying up these gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming, you guys.
Excuse me, can we ask them a question before they leave?
Okay.
Sir.
Twofold question. First, in your opinion, is it South Florida Water Management's desire to remove the water off of the Viking as quickly as humanly possible? First, and second, I'm not questioning your motives, it's just I don't think some people understand. What is the purpose, what are you trying to accomplish by putting these risers on these pipes?
To answer your first question, very simply, no. It
Okay,
is not our intention to have the water leave the Viking as quickly as possible.
okay, thank you.
Every piece of property within the Water Management District has to meet an allowable discharge criteria. That criteria is different depending on where you are in the Water Management District. That number, that discharge rate, is a function largely of the ability of a downstream system to accommodate
I
that
kind of
water.
like it right.
Obviously, you all in Viking here are kind of at the top end of the hill. It takes a while before it gets to a facility that we actually control. So it's going through a number of privately held ditches, county ditches, et cetera, et cetera. And what we are charged with is managing that water to make sure that it's equitable distribution of, in some cases, input, that we all, to some degree, flood together at the appropriate time. And so there's a great deal of detail that Brian knows very well as to what criteria you use to design certain features, roadways, finished floor elevations, homes, and then just general ground as well. So that's my long answer to your first question. The intent of the risers on the culverts that go into the canals is somewhat cloudy. The permit was not particularly clear as to the intent. The reason we typically see those kinds of facilities is a combination of water quality treatment, in which we hold the water back and give it time to leave, and in that time, things settle out. And then the other one is to slow it down so that we are not, overwhelming a downstream system. Even if that system is within the confines of the Viking, we don't want to see the big canals get overwhelmed. We certainly don't want to see the downstream facilities, once it leaves the major control structures for Coquina, to be overwhelmed.
So, just to follow up, and again, this is no reflection on you. By putting the risers on, if we have a flooding situation as it exists currently right now, by adding the risers, it potentially, and maybe most likely, will make it worse.
It's possible, and that's why I think Brian made a recommendation of doing these at test capacity.
All right.
What we have seen, and what residents have come to us with, is that in certain portions of the district there is already flooding concerns, where perhaps in other issues, more up the hill, so to speak, there may not be. So it is possible, and what it will be tested is that slowing the water uphill will help those downstream end. But we cannot necessarily trade off flooding in one area for flooding in another. So a lot of this test is very much about managing expectations and being able to see in the real world what the impact will be of doing this. If it turns out that this does not make sense to do, it is the board's prerogative as a permittee to modify this permit and do something different, as long as the major elements are still maintained. And that would be the rate at which water leaves the complete boundary of Coquina, as well as flooding within it.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Whose judgment call is it going to be with the acceptable flooding going back the other way?
Well, that'll be a combination of things. I mean, what this testing will show depending on how long it goes, is where the water actually gets to. And what I would expect is that's reported back to the board. And the board, as representatives of the constituency, makes a decision that either this is acceptable or it's not. Now, with that being said, we, the water management district, do not accept flooding of homes. So there is an upper limit that will be set by virtue of what the finished floor elevation of any home in the Coquina is. If putting these boards on causes somebody's house to flood, that's a no-go from the start. That won't even be an option of the board. The roadways, flooding, the reality is, in certain kinds of storm events, we expect roads to flood. It is reasonable to expect that even some number of days after large storm events, the roads are underwater. But for lesser storm events, we would expect those roads to be cleared. So that's another thing that would be looked at. So the decision would be somewhat made in combination with one another, but there will be certain hard and fast things that have to be maintained.
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
You said, let's start with the engineers in charge of the infrastructure out there. He's the boss. That's set in chapter 298. You said he's got the prerogative to just change the permit, leave it plainly?
He does, so long as the basic conditions of issuance of the permit are met, which would be that there's not more water leaving Coquina than there should be.
Well, have you ever been out on this site?
Which particular site, sir?
I mean, the whole.
Right.
I've driven through the major infrastructure.
There's a major crossing every mile. Every half a mile, there's a concrete structure. I thought those was supposed to do this slowing the water down.
They are, but
Well, I mean,
in addition,
it was built to y'all specifications.
well, not with regard to these swales and these pipes. No, sir. That's why we've written a non-compliance letter to address these items.
Well, we've had South Florida engineers look at this place and look at it, and everything's fine up to now. And I know the history of South Florida water management. They don't keep an engineer in place long. The last area had no problem with it. Now you got a problem with it. You may be gone 6 months from now. What's the guy that's going to replace you? What's his opinion or attitude going to be?
I certainly can't speak to what a future engineer would have to say. What I will say is that we've got engaged in this issue recently because of complaints from residents. This is not the water managers who are coming in saying this is not right. These are residents coming back in and saying we have flooding. What's the issue here?
I guarantee you, Toucho's coverage said anyway you're going to get planks and no triple poles. Y'all are crippling the water system. Now instead of having just 4 or 5 people underwater, we're going to have half the prairie underwater. And for months and weeks and months, where before we could get it off of them in a week. Now we go just 10-inch pipes and 4-inch holes, and everybody's going to be flooded, and they're going to wonder what the devil happened.
That's unacceptable.
Well, we're trying to figure something out here, so in the
Not
meantime,
figuring very well. If you're gonna
if you
do
don't
something
like
on
Okay.
one
I
side,
don't want to hear it. You got 1 acre, I don't want to hear it. I'm done.
That's one
it's
vote.
okay whether you wanna do
You
it or not.
guys-
I don't know.
Man, you ain't even been here long enough to
You don't
figure
even want to
anything out.
see how ugly our meetings get. We don't have anything more for you. I
You
don't
know,
want to
if water
time.
flows
You guys
hot
want
storms
to
with
do
the
it.
forties,
They're
right?
gonna just
So
start
there you
arguing
go.
back and forth, and we're gonna just.
Well, you know what?
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That's-
Sorry,
that's
just-
Now, what are we gonna do next year?
That's all I got. Y'all have a good day.
We could probably get some of these things done.
You wanna go through your report here? While Ron, as to
Have a
what
great day,
you
man.
were
Well,
doing?
you know, one thing we could do is settle this dispute now. Did you find 298? Did you guys look it up? Is there anything that you could read out loud for us to hear?
If anybody wants to know what I think about it, the board should make a motion to create protocol on how to handle this right now. Right now, vote on it, and then
You're done. Dennis, you're done.
you don't have to worry about it.
I make a motion that it's a simple majority. It's because there's only 3 people, you don't want to stand off. You have to have 2 people vote. And we could have each person end up wanting something else, and it's never going to go anywhere. So simple majority is what I say.
Can I, make a suggestion? Please.
Not right now, we're doing a motion. Tom, does that sound good to you? Simple majority?
I would think it would be. I mean, I've never heard of such a thing before, and it's under 298. It says right there that the people elect, and every year they elect, and they elect their officers. It says didn't bring any of that stuff with me. I wasn't ready for that.
Okay, so that's my motion. We're gonna go on a simple majority.
Fine with me.
So you're seconding my motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Everybody in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed.
Opposed?
Okay, so
The one,
two,
you're out.
so then I guess we have to start over. I nominate Tom Felt to be the chairman of the board.
I think you have an attorney for a reason, and you need to let him research the case law and the different things
We just,
before you
we
finalize anything.
just said we're gonna do this here and now, because we don't wanna go. And it's really great to keep bringing the attorney, and he hasn't had an opinion yet, and it drags out and it drags out, and you're getting $100 an hour, and he's getting $200 an hour, and we pay this man, and we pay that man, and these meetings end up costing like a couple $1,000s, and then there's nothing conclusive formed from it, and so we have to have another one and argue it out again. It's ridiculous. We need to move forward.
So are you going to also go the right way?
Yes, you can go with it.
It is the right way, Mrs. Lyles.
No, but
Did you read any
you
of this
both,
stuff?
I read everything. I've been on
Well-
this board 6 years, so both of you can vote.
Can you read the statute, please?
Zach is not the lawyer here.
Alright, he's away from my whole rest of us.
Ah,
Lawyer
he's
told
not
Okay,
the
you
so
lawyer here.
there's no law,
The
that's
lawyer
true.
told you there's no law. That's
There
why
is
you have
no
a
law,
lawyer.
so we're supposed to set a protocol, so we're setting a protocol. Tom and I just set one. So that's that.
So
You
you
can
just
reverse
dictate
it later.
You just dictate what you wanna do, even though the attorney.
You
advised
don't
not
need to
do that.
speak right now because we're not having
You're doing
public
too much
comments.
speaking.
So Tom,
We're doing it right now. Let's get it over with.
alright, I just made a motion to nominate Tom for the chairman.
I second that motion.
Okay, everybody in favor? Aye.
No,
Okay.
You can't second that.
Ask for opposed after you say in favor.
And
Who's opposes? All in favor?
I oppose.
okay,
All
we
in
have one
favor,
opposed. Aye. In favor.
Okay, I think the taxpayers in the Viking need to
I don't,
get
you know,
a lawyer
Pam, you,
and find out what's really going on
you
here.
sit and you wait till a
Because we're not
public
being
opinion. You hear me?
represented properly by these two now.
Alright, I should have started this off the right way. We need to have a sergeant at arms. Anybody speaking out of turn will be asked to leave the meeting
There's a
unless it's
There's a
during public
deputy
opinion.
right there. So he can get it. Anybody want to leave, he can take them.
Oh. Where's Danny? Danny, you're sergeant at arms.
No, because Danny's standing right here behind the door.
Who is? A deputy?
Yes.
Okay. Unless this lady, sir, can you come in here? How we doing?
I'm good, sir. How you doing?
We're gonna ask this lady to leave. If she does not, she can make her comments at the pub, where everybody else makes comments in the public opinion. Until then, it is up to this board right here to make these decisions.
Yeah, I would gladly do that, but I would have to research your authority to do that before I can do that.
Oh, fabulous. So we're the board in
Okay,
charge, but we
here
don't
we
get
go
to make
again.
any decisions.
I say we.
You're not voted in yet, wait until you voted in. You're not voted.
Oh, I'm not even a board member? I guess I can leave the meeting.
You don't vote for the position you have yet.
I think it's time that
What do
everybody
you
leave.
think?
Lord,
What do you
let's
charge?
adjourn this meeting, and in 5 days from now, we're gonna have another.
Exactly.
It's
And
not
this is gonna be
adjourned, it's
straightened out.
continued.
Continue.
And this will be straightened out,
What date it is?
and I will sign some stuff that will make it authority that this board makes a decision that if the person is asked to leave, that the officer will be making them leave.
You could have done that without even being the authority. Alright.
You know, this bullies on the board, this is the first this happens.
Yeah, because last year, I remember you didn't even have an election. You just assigned positions. And what's
No,
the
you
point
did
of
not.
even? Yes.
Tom second it. It's
Hey, did you guys cancel the meeting or not?
It's
Then-
continued.
Then get it over
Let's
with.
go.